Hi guys, welcome back to yet another fun DIY video here about good old Athena. Athena is so close to being able to go back in the water, I can almost taste it. That sweet, sweet taste of slightly diesel polluted, anti-fouling infused marina water. If you're new to my channel, this is Athena. I'm at the tail end of a somewhat extensive 4-year refit that has been quite the adventure, including rebuilding the entire deck, building a new rudder, painting the hull, and of course copious amounts of oh glorious sanding. All of that is documented right here on YouTube, and I publish a new video every Sunday. Here on the table I've got 2 chain plates. There's an old one of the original ones that came with Athena, and a new one. As you might be able to see, the new one is quite a bit beefier than the old one. The chain plates via the standing rigging is what keeps the mast attached to the boat. So of course it's very important that these are trustworthy. The new chain plates are 12 millimeters. The old ones were just shy of 10 millimeters. Was that upgrade required? Probably not. But there's no harm in doing it, and all it required me to do was to make some new chain plate covers. I've already had those laser cut. This is what they look like before. I rounded over the edges and polished them. For polishing, I used the exact same process I used for the chain plates. I'll include a link for that video in case you're curious. As you can see here, I've already put in all except one of the new chain plates. They're just temporarily dry fitted. There's a hole here underneath the cover that we have to deal with, but we'll get back to that a little bit later in the video. To fit that last chain plate, I'm gonna have to make a hole somewhere in this area. The knee, that's this structure right here, is what the chain plate gets bolted to, and that will tell me exactly where the hole needs to be. I'll use Mr. Oscillating Multi-Tool here to make a hole in my perfectly good deck. Now that I know exactly where to put the hole, I can take care of the rest of the work from out here. This little guy has proven to be the best thing since sliced bread for expanding the hole ever so slightly. After a little bit of fiddling about, the chain plate now fits up through the hole and it lines up correctly. As you can see, this hole is not terribly precise. It's a little bit too big, but that's okay. My current plan is to wrap the chain plate in some plastic and fill the hole with thickened epoxy. I'm going to do to these exactly what I've done to this guy. A couple of layers of paper towel and then some plastic. The paper towel is there to give just a little bit more clearance. I don't think it's a good idea to have the chain plates be a super snug fit in the deck because everything is going to be flexing a little bit. Now if I don't have enough clearance there, I can always just sand away a little bit more of the thickened epoxy, but I think we're good. All of the chain plates are now bolted in place exactly where they need to be. I'm using some very thickened epoxy as a seal. I'm smushing that in place from down below, and then in a couple of hours when this has gelled, I can go ahead and fill the rest of the voids from up top. While we're waiting for the epoxy to cure, there's a little detail on the chain plate covers I would like to point out. These holes are not centered, they're slightly offset to the forward side. That's by design because I want to through bolt those little covers in place. Now there are a couple of reasons why I'd much rather through bolt them in place rather than just securing them with screws. For one, I can really clamp them down and get a lot of pressure on the butyl I'm going to use for sealing around the chain plates. And also, it's much easier for me to protect the core when through bolting rather than using screws. By offsetting the holes just a little bit, I am absolutely sure that there's room on the inside for the knee or the bulkhead to fit a little washer. Hopefully you guys will see this in action a little bit later in the video when I go to do the final installation of the chain plates. It's the next day. Yesterday, after having filled the holes with thickened epoxy, I covered everything up with some plastic. The next step is to make absolutely sure that the plywood is well protected where the chain plates are bolted onto the bulkheads. I've already done this for the 2 knees. To do this, I'm going to have to remove the chain plates again, so fingers crossed they're not epoxied permanently to the boat. It looks a little bit rough around the edges, but the core is definitely well protected. I've left the fiberglass in place on the other side, but I've removed every little bit of wood that was attached to it. There are a couple of reasons why I've chosen to do that. For one, it's going to be stronger. It's also going to be a better seal because there's a larger surface area there. And also the existing holes, well, they kind of mark the position of exactly where the new holes need to be. And in a bit of good news, the plywood that was in there looks almost pristine. I've mixed up a little bit of thickened epoxy that I'm going to use to fill the oversized holes. To this thickened epoxy, I've added a little bit of chopped fiberglass. This is what it looks like up close. This should be very strong. It's the next day, the thickened epoxy has cured, and I've lined up everything I need to install the chain plates, or most of the chain plates. Sometimes my brain is like a bag of cats, and I do stupid stuff like forgetting to order one chain plate. Yep, I am missing one chain plate. But I can still go ahead and install all of these, and I've got everything I should need here. I've got a bunch of bolts, some nuts, washers, and some butyl tape. A quick little disclaimer, I'm not 100% sure that this will work, meaning using butyl tape for the chain plates the way I'm planning to do it. I think it's a good idea, but I don't know for sure. But if it turns out to be a horrible idea, then it's going to be very easy for me to remove the butyl tape and rebed the chain plates. So yeah, let's just give this a go. These two are just temporary, but tightening these two is going to be a little bit difficult because there's only one of me and I can't reach both sides at the same time. So I'm going to apply a little bit of masking tape to the nut. And then I should be able to just wedge this in place and have it stay put and smush up against the deck. It's certainly going to be a lot easier when Ava moves aboard, so I always have someone to hold the spanner. I don't think I need to point out how ridiculously time-consuming it is to fit the chain plates when I'm just one guy. But as with everything else here aboard Athena, it's just a matter of plucking away, and eventually I'll be done. Let's head up on deck and fit the cover. As you can see, I've beveled the edges around the chain plates and also around the two holes for through bolting the cover plate. I've beveled the edges because of the butyl tape, but like I said, I'm not entirely sure the butyl tape is gonna work here because butyl tape works best when it's kind of smushed, and I do have a little bit of a gap down there, but we'll see. What do you guys think? Go ahead and tell me down in the comment section. Now I just need to tighten down the cover and we should see butyl starting to ooze out. It's not terribly warm here right now, so it's going to take a while for the butyl to conform, but as you can see, there's already a bit of squeeze out here. I put this one in about 2 hours ago, and as you can see, there's a lot more squeeze out here. Over the last couple of days, I have spent somewhere right around 12 hours installing all of the chain plates. Well, minus the one that's missing, of course. It's been raining all morning and so far there are no leaks. If the chain plates are gonna start leaking, I'm pretty sure it won't happen until I've put the mast back on, tensioned the rig, and go out sailing. But like I've said, if they start leaking, it's gonna be very easy to rebed them. On my board of tasks I need to complete before I can put Athena back in the water, I've got a task called chain plates. But of course I can't really close that yet because I'm still missing that one chain plate. I've also got a task called install all through hulls. Much like with the chain plates, I've already installed all but one through hull. I thought this was a 1.5 inch version. Unfortunately, I only found out that it was a 1.25 inch version after I'd already drilled a hole in the hull, a hole that's large enough to fit a 1.5 inch version. Groco sells a backing pad for these types of through hulls here, and it's the same size of backing pad for these two models. It turns out that I need to move these little threaded doohickeys to the outer holes, so fingers crossed that works out. At great expense, I have ordered some silicone bronze fasteners and silicone bronze washers to secure the through hull to the backing pad. This qualifies as a successful test fit in my book. After having waited about 3 weeks for this thing to show up, it was stuck in customs just about forever, I'm finally ready to install the last through hull. Turns out after all of that waiting, I am still gonna have to modify the hull a little bit. I have to enlarge it just a tiny bit, but that's a lot easier than trying to make it smaller. Perfect. I've sanded away the copper coat on the outside of the hull around the skin fitting and also wedged the skin fitting in place. The next step is to shorten him just a little bit. Right now I've got about 54 millimeters protruding into the boat, but I've only got room for somewhere right around 25 millimeters. I'm going to attempt to use thickened epoxy to adhere this thing to the hull. While I've got everything lined up, but I'm waiting for the epoxy to cure, I don't want it to move, so I've made this little doohickey just for tightening it in place. The orientation of this guy decides where the handle is going to be located, so before I mix up any epoxy, I want to get that figured out. For this particular through hull, it doesn't really matter all that much because all of this is going to get covered up by a seat that's inside of the shower, and there's plenty of room in here, but still. Of course, I don't want thickened epoxy inside of these threaded doodads, so I'm going to cover the back of those with a little bit of masking tape. I've also applied masking tape to the skin fitting and put a pencil line around the outside of the backing pad. I think that pencil line is going to come in useful a little bit later on. After having removed the skin fitting, the thickened epoxy seems to do a good job of holding the backing pad in place even though the epoxy is not cured yet, so I'm not gonna bother with clamping it down. When installing these GoPro through hulls, you can either through bolt them all the way through the hull, or you can do what I did here. Either way is acceptable, and I think there are some very clear advantages to doing what I've done here. But that's a discussion for another time. I'm going to leave this little guy alone until the epoxy has cured, so that means tomorrow I can come back and install that last through hull. On my to-do board, I've also got this task named Paint the Hull. That entails applying the third and final coat of Perfection Pro to the outside of the hull. But to do that, I need some very specific weather. I need absolutely no rain and no wind. The need for the third coat is not because of cosmetic reasons, it is because of UV resistance, so that third coat is important. But if I don't get a suitable weather window in the next 2, 3, 4 weeks, then it's not gonna happen this year. It'll be too cold and way too rainy. Sure, that is annoying. I would much prefer to be able to completely finish the hull now, but that's what you get when you do boat work outdoors. Now, no matter what happens with the paint job, I am gonna have to start up the main engine pretty soon. I can't really run the engine before I've gotten the exhaust through hull installed, and to do that I either need to finish painting or know for a fact that I'm not gonna finish painting before next summer. But I can still go ahead and get the prep work out of the way for running the engine. Last week I replaced the 2 lower seals in the sail drive, and I got a lot of comments reminding me to replace the oil in the sail drive. So why don't we do that first? That was about 3 liters worth of slightly thickened dinosaur squeezings. Now, while I'm messing about in here, I do need to make a small modification. I've got these awesome pickup tubes for the diesel tank, and I want to remove 2 of those, shorten them, and then use them for the return in the aft end of the tank. I've already used a bit of Loctite on this, so fingers crossed. Apparently, by returning the diesel to the bottom of the tank, you get less air mixed into the diesel, which is good. I don't know how much that matters on a boat that's going to be bouncing around all over the place, but it certainly can't hurt. So let's shorten these a little bit. The 2 inspection ports on the tank are secured with over 100 nuts. And I haven't put those on yet, just because I wasn't sure if I was going to have any kind of alterations made, but I am ready to commit. Nope, scratch that. I am gonna need an extra pickup tube for the fuel polisher and also a return for that. So I'm gonna have to order that, and I can't put those in place without removing the inspection ports. So I'm gonna hold off on securing the inspection ports until I've got those in place. Yesterday, after I realized my little mistake with the pickup tube, I spent some time digging through all of the old stuff for the engine. There's a bunch of the stuff I might be able to reuse, like the expansion tank, this doodad for the exhaust. I will need a new raw water strainer though. For sure, I should be able to reuse these electronic controls, which is good because I'm sure they cost a freaking fortune. I've got a brand new fuel filter and a control arm for the control cables. Speaking of the control cables, I'm probably just going to replace these. One of them looks a little bit worn and it's not super smooth. While going through everything yesterday, I also figured out that I've misplaced the little clamps that actually secure the control cables to the engine and also to the sail drive. Also, I'll need some new hoses, hose clamps, stuff like that. The good news is I've got a pretty good idea of what I need. I've ordered some of it. The rest I'll order over the next week or so. So maybe in 2 or 3 weeks, I should be able to get the old Volvo fired up again. The thickened epoxy from yesterday has secured nicely, and it feels like this thing is now rock solid. I don't know if this is just me being silly, but when installing this, I would like to avoid turning the skin fitting. I'd like to hold the skin fitting stationary on the outside of the hull and just turn the seacock on the inside of the hull. I've got this idea that if I rotate this, then I'm going to smear out more of the sealant in here. And if I hold this stationary, more of that is going to stay put. Like I said, I don't know if I'm just being silly, but let me know down in the comment section what you think. Doing it that way, of course, means figuring out the exact position of the skin fitting on the outside of the hull, because I need these 3 holes here to line up with the holes in the backing pad. I have yet again wedged the skin fitting in place on the outside of the hull. So let's do a final test fit and also figure out the orientation of the skin fitting. I made myself a little wooden doodad and used that to tighten down the skin fitting from the outside. Then I put a little Sharpie mark on the skin fitting to mark its orientation and also note the little bit of weatherproofing. I'm happy with this little dry fit, so let's go ahead and take everything back apart and get some sealant in there. Having applied a liberal amount of sealing, let's get this thing smushed in place. The cement boat people helped me secure the skin fitting while I was turning the inside part. All that's left now is just a little bit of cleanup. Bam! The very last through hole is installed. And this feels absolutely rock solid. I was hoping to be able to close 2 tasks this week, the chainplates and the through hulls. Now, if it hadn't been for my stupid mistake, that one missing chainplate, then I would have been able to. But for now, I'm just gonna have to make do with closing the through hull task. A quick little update on the remaining tasks. You guys know this one, the reconnect the D240, that's the main engine, that's well underway. I'm figuring out what I need. I've got all the cleats, all the nuts, all the bolts, and 4 of the 6 backing plates, so that's almost ready to go. The new prop is just a matter of ordering it. Activate the cover coat. Well, there's nothing really impeding that. It's just going to be a lot of work and I'm kind of dreading it, but that's good to go. The new standing rigging, I've started looking into it, and I think I'm going to go with a combination of swaged and swageless fittings. The servicing of the mast and rewire, I need to figure out what to do there. I think I've found a workshop manual for the mast. The bulwark tow rails, that is, well, that's underway. We'll get back to that in a minute. The fix-the generator. I think the new bell housing is gonna get here sometime in the middle of October, so I'm not sure I'm gonna be able to do this before putting Athena back in the water, so let's just move her over to the nice to-do tasks. The mini bulwark / tow rail is chugging along. I've got a drawing here of what those stainless brackets are gonna look like. The plan is to have those laser cut, bent, and then I'll get them, do a dry fit to see that all the angles line up. Then I'll send them back, have them weld the bolts on the bottom, and then, well, then it's just a matter of polishing them and installing them. I firmly believe that I am right on track to getting Athena back in the water sometime in October, and then I can start focusing on the interior again. And the very first project is going to be to install the heater because brr, winter is coming. The chain plates took just about forever to install, but at least I've got most of them in there. I did see one of them have a small leak this morning, so while this video is rendering, I'm gonna go check on that. And yeah, that is gonna be the end of this week's video. As always, feel free to leave a comment down below, and don't forget, if you've enjoyed this video, remember to leave a like. See you!